In this video help, we're going to be going to what we call the back end of the application, and we're going to start where you always start, which is go to the customer screen. You'll notice that there are a number of different screens in the application, but the principal screen is the customer information. So let's go there. On the customer information screen, what we're going to be covering here is the different pieces of the customer screen. Should look very familiar. All these buttons that we're showing here were the actual buttons that were on the appointment side of the screen. You've seen the pop-up menu where we have all the menu items where you can go to different screens. We have a new thing on this screen which is called the Do Action button. This is used in different screens where you create like a new record in this screen to add a new piece of property that you're either going to make an offer or evaluating. You can evaluate a piece of property and create a lot of the information about it and end up by maybe not buying the property. So you would still have this record, but you could use this all as boilerplate for later on where you're doing other properties where you needed to have additional information that may be helpful from a different advantage. So let's go ahead and click off of that so we can go to the next part. This is kind of a unique little thing that I've added. It has kind of a metaphor of a jukebox. And what this is that if you are using the application and you have websites that are important to you, this particular screen here will collect all of the websites that may be important to you. They may be, say, something like a MRLS, and you have several different MRLS websites you want to use, or you want Google Search, Google Now, or map directions, or online maps, or maybe ask.com, or say you want me on your thing where you have the website to go ahead and access the support site. And these are added by using the button up here that says Website Portal. When you go to the Website Portal, basically you're adding a new record. You create a new one. You put the website name and the URL for that particular website. And then it'll show up in this screen. If you want to show that record, you can go ahead and click on it. It'll take you to that website. This is where you add them. You can have as many as you want. And in this particular case, you can see that I have just a few of the samples that you can go ahead and add in here. Let's go back to the customer. We can quick navigate our way back. And you can see that I have a lot of information in here that I've got to cover. So it's going to take a little bit of time. Let's go ahead and cover we've already covered these buttons to some degree. We'll come back. But I want to cover the tabs. The first tab is the customer data. The customer data is related to the person, in this case, the seller information. The seller can be an individual, a homeowner, a property owner, an agent, a broker, a builder. So there's a lot of different kind of people that this could actually be. This is the listed property that's involved by this particular seller. So the first thing we want to do is enter all the seller information that we have. In this case, it might be a bank even. So you'd enter the bank name, and you'd probably want to put the contact for that bank in this information, plus all the address information, telephone numbers, emails, and other information. How do you keep the information as far as if it's a bank and who's there? You use the seller pop-up. In this case, you can put seller notes in here and anything that's vital that you need to have about this particular seller in that pop-up. You add the asking price of the property. You would go down on the bottom area down here. You can add, this is a default, it'll always show up with the same MRLS site. This is a universal site for everything in the US and overseas. You can get an MRLS number and put it in from that site, so you can put it in here for this particular piece of property when it's listed. You can then go down to the listed property and put the listed property information in. Now most of this information can be taken from this URL by looking up the property name in the city and state where it's located. This particular button here, whatever URL you have in here will take you to that particular website. So if I click this, it's going to open up the website for this particular default MRLS location that I'm using. You can also put your own in there on each record. Once you create the new record, the default is in there. Then you can go back in and add whatever URL you want in there for whatever MRLS you're using. Might be your own local one. Okay, we put in the property, the information on it. This is the vital information: the lot size, the square footage, the dwelling type, the dwelling age, the last sold value, what did it sell for the last time, And then what's going to happen, if you notice that these are green and this is green up here, this will use the square footage to calculate the square footage value based on the asking price. If you change the asking price or the offer, this is going to reflect a less or more situation depending on if you go up or down in the value as far as the buying or asking price that you're going to actually buy the property for. These fields here are related to this, which we started to explain on the appointment screen. Got the same drop down at the bottom, but on the appointment screen, what this is, you have this button, it's right here. You have the ability to put a type amenity in here from the drop down list. There's a lot of different types of amenities that are involved that could be or should be identified as items that should be in the home when you come in. If you come in and say, for example, the microwave is missing, you have to make a decision. If it's your cost to replace it in the offer, when you make the offer, you're going to find out what the replacement value is, and if the cost is going to go to you, you're going to want to add that cost. If it's something that's missing and the seller is going to replace it with either a used or a new item, then you would put in the replacement cost, and then you would put in the actual cost that in the situation of this, would it be a yes or no or pending or whatever? In this case, it would either be yes or no, and you can add that in there as far as what the person's going to do. In this case, the seller is going to take the brunt of that cost. If the seller's going to take it, then his seller retained value is up here. Now what that does is it affects the offer in that whatever the amount is here at the top of the screen is something you should be getting from the seller, and the contingency part of your offer indicates that he has a value up here that he needs to consider that he has to pay out of whatever he gets from escrow in order to provide that, whatever it is, a new microwave or a replacement or whatever. And in the other case, you may want to adjust your buying price, your offer, based on the actual amount of cost that you're assuming you're going to get from this particular situation where you've had the buyer not offer to pay for the item. So you have to figure out how you're going to adjust your offer to cover the costs. So for example, if you come into the house and it's there are things like there's a washer dryer in there, but he's taking the dryer or the washer, and you're going to have to replace it in order to finish the house. Or you don't want the washer and dryer and you want him to take it, but yet you have to replace it, then you need to put in a cost on it. That might be a situation where the washer and dryer are so old and so dilapidated that you don't want them in the home, and you don't want them to be part of the offer, and you're telling him, take them, I don't want them. But yet there is a cost that you're going to have to come up with to figure you have to put into your offer. So that's a lot of information that you have to do. For each line, like I showed you in the appointment, you can click and you can see the notes either from the appointment or the notes that you're actually adding here. Whatever you do here is going to show up on the front end on the appointment screen, so that as you access records through the calendar, you can see all this information that's related to this, so you're not in the dark. These records over here, this is a select area where you have the ID, which is this up here. So number 2 is the record we're currently on. And this is the person that matches that record. If you click on either the number or the name, it will change the record to whatever screen you're going to here. If you want to find a different screen and it's not shown, or you don't want to scroll to it, you can very easily use the find, which is do a find. All the fields will empty out except for the portal records, but you can't do finds in those. But you can do finds on any of the fields above. You can't do finds in this portal. But you can go in there and you can do a find, and once you added some kind of data like a telephone number, a name, or whatever in any of these fields up here, then it would find the records that match. If more than one matches, then you can use the next and previous records to cycle through those, go next, previous, or first record in order to go find those items that you want to see. The next thing you're going to want to do is in this case, I think we did home location. This is the location map for the seller's home in case you need to find the seller and how to get there and get directions to it. Additional data is another screen where you have all the information related to the selling agents, buying agents, brokers, and all that kind of information. Anybody that you're going to need to contact as a part of the transaction of buying and selling this home. You have what are called UDF fields in this application. UDF fields are if I did include something in some part of this screen, or a record or some abnormal thing or unique thing that you need to put in here, you could put the title of it in here and then the narrative and scroll and put as much data as you need to. There's an endless number of these, so you can have as many as you want. And you can look these up when you go to the portal for this record. You can do searches on any portal record in the individual record, not in this screen, but you can go to the individual portals and do searches on those. There's buyer notes in this case on this screen, where you had seller notes on the other screen. You have buyer notes over there. And if you need to, you can put a photograph with your iPad. You can take a picture of the seller and you can put that in there, or the buyer. Either way, it's up to you. Just make a note about what you did. And the next thing we want to look at is the activity track. Now, the activity track is a different kind of way of looking at things. This is something that you do if you want to track the activities where I talked about before. We have a phone call or whatever you're going to do. This is stuff where you want details about this specific client and activities that you're doing for them. Maybe you're looking something up for them, you're sending them emails or whatever. Every time you have a new one, you want to put that in there. Now, what makes these particularly unique is when you click on them, there's a printable page that you can use as a reference to send to somebody, to send to the client, to send to a title company or whoever you need to, that's related to an activity. Let's go back into the customer screen. The same thing occurs when you do a meeting. This is who's the agenda for the meeting. This might be a meeting with a client, title company, agent, broker, whatever. And you put who attended it. Might be both the seller and his spouse, or a buyer and the spouse. This is related to both the buy and sell activity. And then what actually occurred during that meeting. You would put down all the things that are related to it. I like to date them and also put a comment, maybe the guy's name that's actually making the suggestion or whatever, or so you have a complete identification of what the issues are. To create another new record, all you'd have to do is add a date and start this record for the next meeting, and then repeat this. This also has a form that can be sent out as a meeting notes if you wanted to send them to somebody. If you needed to read a field, you can click in it to see all the data that's in it. This one scrolls. Now keep in mind, the one that scrolls up here, you can only put so much information in as an agenda before it will not print on here. And the same thing goes for the meeting attendees, but you have plenty of space to put in textual data down here. Let's go back. Okay, the last thing we're doing is action items. And action items are those critical things that you need to track. You put the action date, the action name, the start date, what the status is, either complete or pending, or whatever you want to put in there, the finish date, and the actual person that is assigned the task. This you don't have to change, it's automatically updated. And again, there's an action item form. If you need to send it to somebody, email it, send a PDF copy or whatever to them, you can do that from the iPad. Let's go back. Okay, now let's do the coverage on these items. This is the last things we have to do on this screen, and it pretty well covers everything we're discussing. This is a repeat of everything you saw on the front screens, only there are buttons that are also added in here. For example, if I wanted to go to the space checklist to edit this particular drop-down of items, this button would allow me to go in and edit it in the space checklist screen and add or delete items on this particular screen. And you can see there's a lot of different things in here as far as the space that we're inspecting and visiting, either during the process of the inspection or during the construction and renovation. We can go in and make notes, and there's multiple ones. Now remember that these all show up in the appointment screen. The inspection portal. The inspection portal is all this data here, but with more space showing to see the data as it's actually entered in the record. There may be additional notes areas depending on the particular screen you're looking in. And you can see by the names what actually is the data that's going in here. For example, you would not change this. This is the actual sequential number for this record. This is the date of the actual inspection. If you need to do a find on data in here, go to the individual portal and do the finds in the portal on that screen to find specific records that are related to, say, an inspection that you're looking for based on. And by the way, this also has the inspected by. There's a similar one to this where you can pop up and edit that list for the drop downs for the different people that are in that list. The reason these are done is in the iPad, you cannot edit a scroller without tapping back in the field and then editing, but that's a one-time occurrence, where these actually allow you to go out and edit so that it now shows up in the scroller in the future, so you don't have to tap back and edit in the scroller. Let's go to the next item, which is photos. We already discussed the photos. This is pretty straightforward. The main thing in this screen is that you do have the inspection photo portal that you can go to get a larger view of this, and a notes field in that screen, and you can view right here on this screen. The next one is offer track. Now in the offer track, this takes a few seconds. So you're basically taking the property that's involved with this particular client, and this is a one-time occurrence. You're putting in the offer title, which is basically the dwelling and the name and the location for it. You're putting in the market value based on cap rates. You're putting in the listing price that's in the listing. You're putting in the appraisal value. This should be coming from your agent or broker. You're putting in the date of an offer if you're going to make an offer. If you're putting it in an offer, you're putting in the offer amount. This will show the differential between the offer and the listing so that you can see what the difference is. If the seller counters and comes back, you're going to get a situation where you're going to see the buyer where you re-offer. You put the time, if it is accepted, you would be putting in the escrow terms date from the start to the finish. If he does not accept it, you have the offer to redo it with all the notes and everything you can include in here. Now, I didn't put all that stuff in, but basically you would do it. But let's say, for example, we make an offer, and when we go to them, we already have additional offers built. In case that they have different contingencies of whatever, we're prepared when we go to them to have some other thing that the agent, when you go to them, or you as the buyer for this particular piece of property, have all your offer information, and you're sitting there with the seller's agent and going through the different things that you want to do as far as buying this property. But you do have multiple ways to look at it. You don't necessarily have to pull this one out. You can go to the next screen real quick and go ahead and make your additional changes and re-offer based on the next screen. Correspondence. Correspondence, as we discussed on the appointment screen, is all the activity that is going back and forth between, say, for example, the agent, the seller, the buyer, the title company, or whatever. This is the kind of things where you're documenting those. These documents are things like licenses, property approvals for inspection, and all those kind of things, and the dates and times and all the activity that's related on those. Once again, the subcontractor information that we already covered. Now, we covered this particular piece that's down here on the bottom, and the other information that's related to it. The basic thing that's here is the select portal, where all this information is reflected in the actual portal, where you can do individual searches on maybe, say, the example of the portal record. It has also its own portal record where you can do searches based on that. Obviously, this is for this piece of property that we're talking about here. Then there's the sub-schedule. We already discussed this, but this also has the sub-schedule portal that you can go to. And the floor inspections, same situation. It has a floor inspection portal where you can go in and add. You can add them here, but you can also go there and scroll through the different screens or do finds in that screen to find a particular record based on its title. Now, that's a lot to cover. If you have to go back through and you have questions, please contact me through the support site and ask your questions where the FAQs are on the main support site. Thank you.